What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, NVIDIA, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about when Jerome Powell is giving a speech for tomorrow and how this could affect the markets, and also some other important factors that could affect how the market moves going into tomorrow. But before I break anything down about this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. This offer ends in just 8 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. So, SPY is getting tighter and tighter as the days go on, and the question that now remains is, will this thing continue to remain tight? Or are we about to see a big move to the upside or downside? And the answer will depend primarily on what happens with tomorrow, as we have Jerome Powell speaking and some data coming out, and also how the market responds to some new resistance levels. So what's happening for tomorrow? Tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 15 minutes before the market opens, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. Now, is this going to be significant or not? It's going to depend on what he says. He's going to be giving the opening remarks at the Division of Research and Statistics Centennial Conference in Washington, D.C. If Powell says anything involving the economy, anything about monetary policy, if he says anything about inflation, which is still a possibility, this could still shake the markets. So you want to be very careful, because when this guy opens his mouth, the market could make a very, very big move. We saw what happened when Powell spoke. The last time the guy spoke, okay, SPY went berserk. We saw this huge rally that started on November 1st. That's what kicked off this rally. And it just shows how much the Fed's policies and Jerome Powell could affect the markets. That's why we should not just kind of like sit back and relax just because he's giving opening remarks. You always need to be prepared just in case he says something. All right. So he's going to be speaking at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time before the market opens. And then at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 17-week bill auction coming out. Then we have the 10-year note auction at 1 p.m. These could cause yields to move a bit. So we're going to be watching these very carefully. This could affect the market too. And besides that, we just have a couple of Fed speakers, which are just going to be kind of minor. And that's pretty much it for tomorrow. Now, when it comes to the emotions driving the market, we used to be super fearful. We were on like extreme fear just a couple of days ago. Now we're on just fear, getting very close to neutral. So the market is becoming less fearful, and we're seeing fear no longer driving every single indicator out there. If you look at the market momentum, it's on neutral. Stock price strength is on still on extreme fear, but it's becoming less like that. And the puts and call options are now kind of neutral, as we saw a lot of puts being closed after the market began to push. And we're seeing these things just continuing as time goes on. For earnings, we just have basically Rivian coming out right now. And then after that, for tomorrow, we have Roblox in the morning alongside Warner Bros. And then for after the market closes, we have AMC and Disney, Disney being the most important one for tomorrow. We'll see if this causes anything to shake for retail. And right now, the NASDAQ is once again on a very, very big streak. This is the longest streak since November of 2021. Once again, the market is continuing to pump and pump. So what do I see going forward? Is the market going to keep squeezing? The answer is very simple. It's going to depend on what Powell says. We're getting very tight here, and we're going to be watching if SPY could get above 437.5. Now we look bullish. We're making higher highs and higher lows. And when you look at the 4-hour time frame, you can see we have this area of interest in the 438. So you can see we've been touching this level many, many times, and these market makers could be going after that area because of these imbalances. So when you look at the 4-hour, when we kind of zoom out a little bit, you will notice that once again, we tended to get rejected around 438 on SPY. So we have some tight resistance here. If we break the 438s, we could push all the way up to 440. But for now, we're not at 440 yet. We're going to be watching 438. Does SPY reject off this level or not? And does Powell pump us up there? That's going to be key for tomorrow. All right, that's going to be a very, very key level if we do pump more. So let me just kind of like simplify this. So if we're bearish after Powell gives his speech and we cool off, watch key support at 435. If we lose that, watch 433. If we lose 433, we're going to turn more bearish, so watch that carefully. If we're bullish, you want to break 437.5, we're going to be watching for a push for the 438 area. That's going to be key as well. Looking at the technicals, we got a decent size close today, and we're seeing SPY getting tighter alongside NVIDIA and other tickers. So it's looking like the market is not done just yet, and there's a good chance that we're going to see a breakout thanks to maybe Powell's speech up to the 438s. The market makers may be targeting that level. We're going to see some very tight resistance up there. So we'll see if this rejects or not. So I think the most likely possibility is us kind of like pumping a little bit more, getting very close to 438 and maybe rejecting off of it. Or we could just, pop a tiny bit and then reject. So we're going to be watching 438, a test around there to see if we break or reject there. But I do believe there's a good chance of us testing that, looking at the current technicals. And we'll see what Jerome Powell causes. For the QQQ, if Powell and the markets pump more, QQQ could be going for 374 plus to 375. If we're bearish, we're going to be watching it come back down to 371, which if we lose, we can see 370. Now, historically, we have this resistance very close to about almost 374, just under that. So we're going to be watching if the QQQ could come just below 374 to reject, or if we break this, that's the most likely possibility for tomorrow. We're also getting very tight right over here. You can see this thing has just got tighter as the days went on. So we're going to be watching this trend right here to see if this thing kind of like breaks out or not. My gut is telling me from a technical standpoint, the most likely move will be us getting very close to 374 then rejecting. But just to be safe, let's see what Jerome Powell causes, and we will see which way this ends up going. For NVIDIA, okay, NVIDIA's at some tight resistance between 460 and 462. Now, historically, we have some tight resistance here. We've gone rejected at 462.25 in the past. So we're going to be watching to see if NVIDIA rejects or not. If we're bullish, you want to break the 462s and push up for at least 464. If we're bearish, you want to see it break and reject from this level and start breaking down towards 455, which if we lose, you're going to be watching for 450 and potentially more downside. Now, we have a bearish divergence on NVIDIA. It looks like it might sink very soon, but just to be safe, we'll see what Jerome Powell says. The 4 hour is losing a lot of momentum. We're seeing a bearish divergence on the RSI. And the daily time frame, if you look at the daily, we're starting to lose a little bit of steam. We're losing just a bit on the RSI. So we're going to be watching this very carefully. So the daily shows that it may not be done if we end up breaking 465, but there is some steam being lost, especially on the 4 hour. So I'm thinking that it all depends on Powell if we get this rejection off 462 or not. That could be the high, but if Powell pumps us higher, then it may not be. So we'll just have to wait and see. My guts tells me it either retests 462 and rejects, or it pushes a little bit higher to 465 and then rejects. We'll just have to see what Powell causes, but look for a rejection very soon because this thing is very overbought. For Apple stock, we're close to some tight resistance. In fact, we're at resistance right now around the 182s. That's where this historical level was right up here, very close to 182.5. So if we reject off this, we could see this start to descend and get very close to 180. If we break 182.5, we could see this get very close to 183.5. Now, those are the bullish and bearish cases. What do I think is more likely? Well, we have this tight resistance. We have to see if Apple could break this in order for it to go higher. I don't know if it's going to break just yet, as it depends on Powell and all these other pieces of data. And this thing is a little bit overbought since it just pumped like crazy without getting much of a retracement. So maybe it gets like a double top and then just rejects from here. We'll see if it rejects or not. It does look like it might reject and start to cool off a bit for being overbought and retest 181 flat, potentially even 180.5. But just to be safe, we're going to be watching to see if we reject off this level, this mid 182 area. That is going to be key. So we'll just have to wait and see. Now, how is Tesla looking? Tesla, in my opinion, is gaining a little bit of strength. It's trying to push up higher, but you can't forget that this head and shoulders like pattern on Tesla is still valid. We still have this technically on the chart and has not been validated just yet. So this head and shoulders, which happens to be right here. Let me just pull this up on a smaller time frame so you can see it a little bit better. Tesla has basically made an attempt to rebound, but we still have like a left shoulder here, the head and a right shoulder forming. So there could be a risk of it potentially coming down to fill its gap below. So we're going to be watching this very carefully. If Tesla's bearish, you want to see it lose 220 and then sink to 214. If we lose 214, 212 is coming, and then we could fill the gap down to 205. If we're bullish, you want to see it break and close above 225. If it manages to achieve that, it could turn bullish. In my opinion, the more likely possibility is Tesla pushes a little bit more thanks to Powell. We're going to be looking for a rejection close to 225 to 226. And if it doesn't break this high, it could reject and still form a head and shoulders. And we could still see Tesla drop lower. So there's still a risk of it kind of like popping and dropping. That is still very probable. But just to be safe, we're going to be watching these levels. I'm not going to turn like really, really bearish unless we see Tesla lose these key supports unless it breaks like 215 and etc. So far, it hasn't done that, so we're just going to wait and see what happens with Powell and etc. So for the IWM, it's looking a bit more bearish. I'm just going to be kind of quick for the rest of these. I don't really want this video to drag on. For the daily charts, I would say that we're looking a bit more bearish. You can see that this thing is losing momentum, and we have this gap down here to fill. We could see this gap get filled. We haven't fully filled it yet. So look for a test of 169.65 to 170 very, very soon. On Microsoft, the daily chart, it still has some strong momentum. It's continuing to push, but I would be very careful because we're approaching some tight resistance at 366. So it could pop a little bit more towards 365 to 366, then reject. We're at some tight resistance as we just hit 362 and rejected. So we'll see if we reject off 362.5 or not, or if we bounce towards 366 and then break down. I'm looking for a rejection soon. It's very overbought, so be very careful. On AMD, we got a nice bounce today, but be very careful because we're very close to this gap area right here, which is where we have resistance at 116. I could see it pumping to 116 and rejecting, or rejecting from here. It's going to depend on Powell and etc. The VIX is developing a bullish divergence. You can see it on the chart right here. If this divergence plays out, we can see the VIX bounce to the 15. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. The SQQQ is at support at 18. We were calling this level out yesterday, which is why I was talking about some more potential upside for the markets. We're at support. So we're going to be watching to see if this thing could bounce. It's very oversold. If we get that bounce, we want to see this thing break and hold above 18.25 and eventually try to get close to 19.06. This would be because of the market dropping, which I think is going to happen soon. The dollar is already starting to bounce a bit. It could be forming a bull flag. So we're going to be watching this carefully to see this accumulation. I could see this thing testing 105.8 to slow the market down soon. Coinbase is at 89, but be careful because even though we're pumping and pumping and pumping, we have this resistance right here between 89 and 90. You can see right here the remaining rejections very close to this 90 area. So like between 85 and 90, even at 89. So we have some tight resistance on Coinbase with the bearish divergence. I either see it going to the low 90s, then rejecting and coming back down to 84.89, or it just comes back down from here. So I'm anticipating a drop coming soon on Coinbase. On Google, it's continuing to climb, right? We were talking about this potentially happening, but Google is testing the 200 EMA on the daily. So it could reject either here or on the daily, like I was saying earlier, if we reject off the 50 EMA, then we could come back down to 130. So we're going to be watching if this thing could close above 133 or if it rejects from here. The daily is showing some strength, so it might make an attempt to go a little higher, right? It could go a little bit higher toward 135, but then we have some like tight resistance there. So just be very careful. We'll see. I think it could get very close to 135, then reject if it ends up failing to close above these EMAs. And that's when we could see Google downtrend a little bit. I think Amazon is near some tight resistance. So watch for 143 to 146. That's where we have this gap up here, which I think Amazon's going to fill. So a little bit more upside, then a rejection potentially at 145 is on the table. We have some tight resistance there, and we've been pumping very hard. So look for a little bit more upside than a drop. And I think that that's very likely throughout the market. For Meta, we're very close to this level. We were talking about if 318 broke, we could turn bullish. I think Meta could get very close to like this 325 area if we continue to break out. Then we're going to see some tight resistance up there. So it might pump a little bit, then reject and start sinking towards these lower levels. So look for a little pop and drop on Meta. And I think that the market may follow the trend. So there could be a little bit more upside coming thanks to Jerome Powell, but watch resistance on SPY, Tesla, the QQQ, and these other tickers. Hopefully this video was very simple and easy to understand. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks again, and peace out.